I mean, basically nothing exists, but I'm Austin.
And I'm Cloud.
And this is We Watch Spookies.
Today's movie is The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is a 1964 horror film directed by Michael Carreras, starring Terrence Morgan, Ronald Howard, Fred Clark, and Jeannie? I'm not sure. Jeannie Rowland. I don't know how to
In the year exactly 1900, some British expeditioners paid by an American go to Egypt to find a tomb, to take stuff from that tomb so the American guy can do like a across the world show. Follow that up with some dude ends up being a really, really old Egyptian guy who's immortal, who can only be killed by his brother, who is the mummy. So he brings the mummy back to life using ancient voodoo magic stuff, and then the mummy kills him, and then everything's okay. But the mummy kills a few other people along the way, but whatever.
Yeah. So, we've been a lot of places so far in this series, but we have not been to the Hammer films.
Yes.
Until now.
Hammer films are great.
But here we are. Because we could not do a series on the Spookies without doing a Hammer film. At least one. We're only doing one.
Only one. But
because we have much else to cover. I guess we're a little over halfway through with this one, but so we can't take up a ton of time. We have much else besides, but we had to take a stop here in the I guess I thought this was earlier than it was. It turns out it's only 64. I thought it was like 60 or something, but it's not. It's 64. Either October or like the last possible day of 64 if you're in the US. If you were in the US, it came out on October 18th in the UK, but it came out December 31st of 64 in the US. So barely 64.
Barely.
Probably almost nobody saw it that day. I don't know how many people necessarily saw it anyway. I feel like this is probably much more seen after the fact than during the fact, or whatever
like,
whatever
hey,
the correct
we
phraseology
need
of
horror
that is.
movies. Well, the
Horror.
Hammer made
films.
some films back in the day.
Yeah, well, and they're retrospectively important, as much we've discussed recently is, even if it was not considered so at the time.
Yeah.
Although the Hammer films were quite well known at the time. Stephen King was highly influenced by the Hammer films and the various other sort of mid-period horror movies that there were. And most of it's like the Hammer movies and the earlier Universal movies that are really all of the classic monster characters that's where they came from. Like we did the Monster Squad, I think probably 2 years ago. Something now like that, yeah. In October, and so I guess in
3
March.
years.
It would have been March, not October, because we decided that it counted as a monster movie because it had the Universal monsters in it, and it has monster in the title. So even though it takes place it takes place closer to Halloween probably, but we decided it's a monster movie, so it counts. But so you had the Universal monsters and you had the Hammer monsters, and that's like most of what you had. The Mummy and vampires, and even just like other the Hammer movies did drift into non classic character kind of stuff, where it's just like something creepy is happening. This guy's gonna murder some people, maybe because reasons, or there were various different things that they did that were not necessarily just repeats of the Universal monsters. And the Mummy is a generic enough thing that you can kind of do whatever you want with it, I guess. Although what's been done with it since has been,
Not good.
well, I mean, not necessarily not good. I mean, we're not gonna say like all of it's not good. Like Tom Cruise Mummy is at least popularly not good, but Brendan Fraser Mummy is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like the succeeding 4 or 5 different movies in that franchise.
Well, there's
are
enough mummy
lesser
movies
quality, but-
in between that no one remembers their name
Yeah.
because there's no reason to.
I don't know.
remember
The only
their
ones I remember is there's the Mummy. There's what is it? Is it? It's not Return of the Mummy, is it? Is it called something else? And then so there's whatever that like the next Brendan Fraser one is, and then I remember there's the Scorpion King.
It's the second one.
If that's the second one, I
Yeah.
thought it was later after they were like, now we're just doing this this other thing now that we're saying takes place in the same universe.
Yeah, it's like, because that was the thing is because you have like the Scorpion King as like the standalone, but then there's like the Mummy with the Scorpion King,
Yeah.
and then like the third one is like Rise of the Dragon King or something like that. So
Dragon.
Dragon.
I don't think there were any dragons in Egypt.
No, it takes place in China
Oh.
because it's Jet Li. Because it's like the Terracotta Army and like the emperor that was buried there. He's the mummy.
Yeah, I don't think that like that's reaching a bit.
It is
Like they were reaching by that point. Like if it's not, how it's
like
not,
they're not
it's
even reaching. They got like one of those like back scratchers with the clamps on the end. That's the kind of reaching they went for.
Like how it's not World War II if you don't see Hitler. Like it's not a mummy if it didn't come from Egypt.
Exactly.
Like just being dead doesn't make you a mummy. It just doesn't. Like mummies come from Egypt. That's what's going on. Which even in this case, like they're making up just everything.
Yeah.
Because there was no there's no tomb of Ra. Ra was like the main Egyptian god who eventually I think merged with Osiris or Anubis or somebody. But he was one of the gods, and all of the pharaohs, because they're minor gods in their own right, are considered sons of Ra. But Ra himself was never a real life pharaoh as far as anyone knows, or at least not as commonly known. And in the little bit of I don't think this is real kind of searching that I did very briefly, it doesn't seem to be real. So they made up a mummy.
This is about as real as the Egyptian stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh.
I mean, I don't think that. What is his name? What's the pharaoh's name?
Atem.
I don't know. Could have been a real pharaoh. Yeah, well, no, that's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of Yami wasn't a pharaoh, I guess, was he?
No,
or was he?
Yami's name was Atem.
Atem? Okay, so he's not.
That's his real name.
His real name.
My favorite mummy is the Irwin's mom from The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
You have to say it right. You can't just say Irwin. You have to say Irwin.
Irwin,
you have to say
I know you're there.
Irwin.
Answer the phone, Irwin. Irwin.
And it's only Irwin in the case of that Irwin, because you don't say Steve Irwin when you're talking about the crocodile hunter, because he's his own person. And you don't really say Steve, I guess you say Steve Irwin sometimes, but you might as well just say the crocodile hunter, because he has his own name. Not to be confused with Crocodile Dundee, but it's a different crocodile guy that's also Australian.
I'll drink to that.
Rather after the fact, I guess. So some whatever the Australian word for lifting an idea is. I know they speak English in Australia, allegedly. Look forward to your letters. But so
how do we feel about the way the mummy looks?
Well, see, that's the thing is the mummy. Now we have the mummy. We think of sort of Brendan Fraser and hints.
Yeah.
Mummy. But the mummy used to just be a dude-shaped thing wrapped in bandages.
Which is what I personally prefer, just because I like that general look. It looks and feels more real.
Well, because that's what it would have been. It's a body, they wrapped it in bandages that were dipped in this stuff. And it was just the shell of the body, basically, because this whole bring it back to life thing, I think, is not really the right word to use, because it's sort of bring it back to I don't know what
animation.
if it's animation or whatever
Like
the
we're
like
gonna
unlife
reanimate
that
it.
zombies are or something, because it can't be literally alive, because when you make a mummy you take the organs out and you put them in jars and set them off to the side,
Yeah.
so it can't be like literally alive in like an actual way, but it can be, I guess, reanimated by magic or something. They never even addressed the organ jars or anything, which that's one of the things that's been significant about one or two of the actual mummy tomb discoveries, is they're like, oh look, it's like the mummy and all of the artifacts and like the organ jars, and there's still the stuff inside the organ jars, and then it's a big deal when they find the complete thing. And now this is 64, so this is 40 something years after the actual discovery of King Tut's tomb.
Yeah.
So like they know
We know stuff. At this
we know
point.
stuff, yeah. And actually, I've seen like the real a big piece of the artifacts and other various artifacts from other tombs and other Egypt things in the actual sarcophagus of King Tut. I saw in person. They brought it to one of the museums in Dallas some years ago, and I went to see it. And there's a lot of gold.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of. It's like you think you're like, it can't be that much gold. You see pictures or like cartoons of mummies or something, like they can't have like a whole sarcophagus of gold. They do. It is.
It's gold.
It's gold. It's really impressive. They cleaned it up really nicely too.
Yeah.
After they discovered it. So.
Well, it's kind of like
like
this one. Like the sarcophagus in this movie is
which they
obviously
never
fake.
say. They
Yeah.
always say coffin, which bothers me because it's not a coffin. Like other things have coffins. Mummies have sarcophaguses.
No, like they do say sarcophagus once.
Do they?
And they only say it
I didn't
the
even
one
notice it.
time when they're lowering it into the crate. That was the only time, because that's what made me go, that sarcophagus is clean.
Mm-hmm.
It's clean. Because like they discover it, and then it's just like within 6 days, it's spotless.
Yeah, everything is spotless.
It's almost like it was made as a prop.
Yeah. Well, we do have a lot of nice like panning over the various artifacts and things in the tomb as the opening shot under the credits.
Like, I almost feel like there was too much light and they played the wrong music, because otherwise it could have been really creepy.
Yeah, it wasn't creepy at all. It was kind of like, ooh, look, artifacts.
It's like a walk-in museum kind of thing.
It basically was. Yeah, that's what
really
it was.
Tight.
When I don't even think it was that upbeat, because like I did the audio tour of the actual artifacts, and it was narrated by, what is his name? He's a famous actor.
Brendan
Can't
Fraser.
remember. It's not Brendan Fraser. No.
Tom Cruise.
I can't remember. No. Stop naming white guys. What is his name?
There's a lot of white guys in this movie.
There's a lot of white guys. Yeah. Even the even the not white guys are mostly white guys. Lots of white guys and lots of fezzes, and lots of drinking brandy. Also, sometimes probably excessively heated over candles or something, rather than just in your hand like you're supposed to. See, like he pours some brandy, puts it over this like miniature like fondue pot stand, and waits a while, and then he's like, yeah, that's warm enough, and then he still is like handling it with his hands as if it's still not warm enough, or he must keep the heat in it or something, or maybe it's too hot and he's like fumbling with it, but he doesn't want to say that in front of the girl. Because there's also much like forcing of relationship in this between like this guy reminds me so much of Wayne Newton that it's kind of distracting, because I mean it's not like exact, but it's like the shape of his face and kind of his hair and his like smooziness of like famousness and everything, like trying to get the girl is very Wayne Newton to me for some reason. I don't know whether Wayne Newton prefers brandy or not, but he's really smoozy and really like, why don't you come and stay at my estate instead of at a hotel while you're in London? And it's like, I hobby a bit with Egypt information, and it turns out that that's not the case at all, because he's actually the Pharaoh's brother from ancient times, which is
how the Pharaoh's brother was a white guy. I'll never know.
Something of a twist. Yes, the Pharaoh's brother's a white guy.
It's not even okay, because like they have like some white people who are like
White people.
like they're brown faced.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, okay, so they're at least trying to make it where it's like they don't look like white people, even though they are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, it's 64. I'll let it slide just because at least they're trying. But like this, like
He's just white.
he's just a white dude.
He's not even trying to look
He's just
not white.
He's a British ass white dude, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm actually 3,000 years old.
I mean, I guess he's had 3,000 years to get pale, so
I don't think that's how that works.
I don't think so either, but I don't know.
But yeah, that's the thing, and it's very odd. Like we have one person who may be of Egyptian descent actually play an Egyptian, and then we get a couple of black people who are dressed up as Egyptians for like a show. And that's about it. Everybody else is white, and so it's like if you're not paying attention, you never know who they are, except for the the British dudes who had to move stuff.
Oh yeah, and I'm not really sure what the deal is with them at all because they don't really serve much purpose except to be exceedingly British and hide in crates frightenedly and stuff, but only a couple of times even, and then they disappear from the movie. And they're not even there enough to be like, oh look, they're comic relief, because they don't really do anything especially funny.
No.
And they're not there long enough to be established comic relief characters, so I'm not really even sure what they're for.
It looked like they got hired to move the stuff, which would make sense, but at the same time, like, of all this stuff having high value, why would you want to just hire random people to be like touching all of these extremely, like, why?
Yeah, because they like play with the Anubis mask. Yeah, it's
like
it looks a bit like my sister.
It looks like my wife.
I like my wife. Yeah, I hope not.
Like,
I hope you're right.
It almost makes me wish
like a mythical Egyptian dog. Yeah. Well, maybe he does. We don't know.
It's like what was it?
A bit like my wife.
You might have to get a canine license to take her out.
Yeah.
Like, damn, son, this savagery is intense.
Savage.
But it's like, why do you need these? They don't look like they should be professionals. They
only look like they should be British. That's as much as they look like.
Someone's stealing some shit. That's all I'm getting at. Someone's stealing.
No one seems to, and they're not involved. Now, okay, hang on a minute. Let me see where. Let's see. When did? Aha! Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy came out in 1955, so it pre-existed this. So maybe they thought, maybe we need to have a couple of funny dudes because we're making a mummy movie here, and people like funny dudes in the Mummy, and so we'll just have these funny dudes. But we can't have it be the focus of the movie because we're making a Hammer movie here. But we can have the funny dudes for a minute or two. I don't know, because otherwise I have no explanation for their existence in the movie at all. There's a P.T. Barnum mention, although there's actually, he says, he uses his actual first name, which is uncommon. He says Phineas T. Barnum would say. And he's gonna like travel around the exhibition, which I feel like is also like way overplayed. The amount they're like, you can't tour the exhibition, it's sacred artifacts and this and that. And it's like, well, they toured the King Tut exhibition in the like 30s.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time.
Well, like, okay, so I guess this is more of a question based around morale, but if you were to discover something and you would want to have it kind of bounce around the world for people to be able to see, like, what's the difference between doing it at a museum that charges admission and then having a dude do it on his own?
Because museums have prestige, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You could have a shit museum.
I mean, you could, yeah. Well, I mean, the one, like the famous ones, like the real, like the King Tut artifacts do mostly stay in the Cairo Museum in Egypt, except when they travel around from time to time. So they do have a permanent home in Egypt, but then they also tour them so that people who can't make it to Egypt can see them because they're significant and stuff.
Like, I don't see where the difference is here compared to, like, what actually happens. Because if anything, you know, he could, Mr. King, the American business guy in showbiz, like, he could just be like, okay, well, if the Egyptian government pays me this, they can have it, but only after I'm done touring it. And then after it's toured, it'll stay at whatever location they pick.
Yeah.
That way he can make all of his money back and then some, and they get what they want.
Yeah. I mean, because he's like, we could make 700,000 pounds instead of whatever it is, 70,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Just at the museum. It was Omar Sharif who did the narration for the audio tour of the King Tut exhibit. So I don't know. I couldn't remember it.
Now, from the movie making perspective, I want to know why they decided to have all of these really long kind of establishing shots that don't actually establish anything. It's like whenever like everybody just starts staring at the sarcophagus and there's this high note to let you know it's important, and then like you see everyone's face just stare at it, and then it pans over and it's just the sarcophagus. It's not doing anything. You know, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like that's fine, I guess. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Important close-up of importance.
And then they'll give us close-ups of all kinds of things. And you're like, this is a suspicious close-up. I bet he's going to play an important role later. And then it's like, nope, we're also going to do a close-up of the monkey for the end of this scene.
Yeah.
We never see the monkey again.
Nope. The monkey was important for that scene. Gets a close-up.
Like, there's like this statue of the golden cat, and it gets a close-up, and we don't see it again.
Nope. And it doesn't come to life or anything. Now, that's really just, I think, movie making in the early mid-'60s, because even if you watch the first few James Bond movies, there's a lot of times where it's like, wow, we're watching him walk over there for like this whole time, or hey, look at this establishment of this thing or place.
No shortcuts here.
And it's just like, hey, we're going to show stuff because it's happening, and we haven't figured out how to be Michael Bay yet. And actually, really what has happened is we haven't, like, George hasn't made Star Wars yet and showing everyone that you can cut real fast and it's okay.
Pew 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 pew.
So, pew, pew. But it's so it's not unique to just this. It's just that kind of style.
Oh yeah, I'm just giving it some shit.
We're cut super fast, and it's kind of okay. Like, it's all right to look at things for a while, but it is like, wait, does this mean something? Because we're looking at it really close.
Well, like even with that, like between these shots and then some of these sets, like some of these sets are amazing. Mm-hmm. Like we built like the entire library.
Or the library, the boat, yeah, the boat that they're on. There's like this great, like we pull back out to the side of the boat from the deck that they're standing on, and then like crane up 2 decks, and then come back into where the French woman is sitting. And it's like, wow,
that's crazy. There's no edit there.
It's maybe that's not a set. I doubt that's probably a boat. They're just like, we have this boat.
I don't know about that. Like maybe it's a boat that's like on land or something. Because like
that's not what boats are for.
You got to think about like how like the water would keep the boat moving, and that like the boat like doesn't move at all.
Yeah, but if you mount the crane arm to the boat, then it moves the same amount. I don't know how they did it. It could be a set, but if it is, it's an expensive set.
We'll just take the boat and park the boat at like one of those repair docks. So it's
dry
like,
dock.
Yeah, a dry dock. So it's like elevated, and then we'll just take a gib or something and just like
a jib.
Jib. Stick the camera in, pull it out of the window, and just shoot it up, and then just shove it back in. Like, all right, there we go.
Gib is the last name of the BG brothers, not a piece of camera apparatus. Well, the mummy's staying alive,
shooting on film,
and so is the brother. It's film for sure. No way it's not film now. So we have to talk about the poster, because the poster has some stuff on it. Because there's actually like a couple of different things here. No, wait, where's the other one? I had like 3 things here, because there's ones that are on the poster, and then there's one other one. Let me see if I can find the other one. But so like the main thing, because this is a 60s poster, and as we found out with things like what was it, the Giant Claw and Valley of Guanji, where there's just like, hey, we've got a tagline, and then we've got like the much more paragraph of text like inset thing that's not really a tagline, but it's still on the poster. So we've got those at least, and then there was one other thing I'll have to see if I can find again. But so the first tagline is half bone, half bandage, and all blood curdling horror.
I want to experience blood-curdling horror at least once.
Watch Marvel Hornets.
Like, I want to be able to come out of it and say my blood was curdling.
I feel like you probably don't, because that feels like really close to what like non-optimal decompression from deep sea diving is like, and you probably don't want it to happen. And then the inset thing is, out of an ancient pharaoh's tomb stalks a monster of monsters with a lust for vengeance and a thirst for terror. So, like, much intensification.
Can I get that as diet terror?
diet terror.
My God. I love all those movie posters, those taglines. They're like the best stuff ever. Like, how can you not like that? It's just so silly. And like back then, that was some serious business.
Yeah, it's serious business. These
Serious
taglines. It's extreme.
I like the mummy attacks. I think that like they're really simplistic, but it's like, how are we going to show that this mummy is like really dangerous? Like, all right, you shoot it, it doesn't know it's being shot, just whatever. It hits you, and then you just die.
Yeah, I do really like the pan down to his hand with the revolver in it, and then it's like hanging on by one finger, and then it drops to the ground. I like that.
It's extra clarification.
It is
that he's dead.
He's dead.
Like we took a cat statue and beat him in the head with it, and he's dead.
They're dead.
Which
let's see, he kills the American guy. He kills Giles.
Which I thought at first his name was Charles, and at first when they're in the tent and the American guy is like, money, and then the guy says, but I thought he said Charles is in charge, and I thought, Charles in charge, like for real? But then it turns out it's Giles, and it goes back and forth because sometimes when he says it sounds like Charles, when the French woman says it sounds like Giles, and then later when he says it sounds like Giles, and it is in fact Giles. But it's very confusing because everybody has accents, and it's unclear for most of it what his name actually sounds like. And it's just him because, you know, King is fairly obvious, Dubois is fairly obvious. And so it's not everybody else. It's not everyone has confusing names. It's just him.
I'm trying to. Didn't he kill a third person, or was it just those two?
No. Well, we think that he kills other people, but then they're okay.
Well, because I know he kind of like the woman passes out, and then he kind of backhands his brother.
Yeah.
And they're both okay. But I could have swore there was like one more person. Oh, the Egyptian guy, because he smashes his head in. He just like he bows down. He's like, here, take my life for what I've done, and then he just like walks up, steps on his head, and just.
Which I am suspicious of because he's doing it in almost a ceremonial way, what he's saying, and it seems to have been very important that the words of life were the original Egyptian that's on the medallion.
And everything else is in English.
But then everything else is in English, and he's doing his penance in English to the mummy. And it's like, the mummy doesn't know English. He's been dead for 3,000 years and spoke Egyptian. So how does he even know that you're giving penance?
Yeah.
And like the brother is speaking in English, which, you know, he's had plenty of time to learn.
But you know what? It's okay, because this is for an English-speaking audience.
Well, sure, but...
otherwise, no one would want to watch it.
Although there's a little bit of a Highlander, like a pre-Highlander kind of vibe going on here, because, you know, he's lived since ancient times. He doesn't really want to anymore. There's a specific circumstance by which he can die.
There can only be one pharaoh.
I mean, there can only be one Ra, and that's okay, because Ra wasn't a pharaoh and there was no competition, really. Regardless of what this movie will tell you, yeah.
All right, so we established that Adam, who is actually B, the Pharaoh's younger brother, is a bad guy. Because he's got to steal the affection from our hero John's lady, the French lady, and he lays it on thick, like it's thick as peanut butter, like 2 layers of peanut butter that have been frozen and then just stacked on top of each other because it's that thick. But we'll see him like just kind of snap. Like there'll be little times where she'll be saying something or she'll do something, and he just kind of like it's like a hard 360. And he's like, "Whoa, what is this?" And he's nice. What? This crown has always been mine. And he just snatches it out of her hand. Like, bro, if you didn't want her touching it, just say, "Ooh, please don't touch this. It's a real artifact."
Well, of course it's a real artifact.
Like people just be picking up and touching shit. Like, you gotta be careful. That stuff could be fragile.
Well, she spent a long time in the tomb and with the like, look at the British comic relief guys they hired to handle the artifacts.
Yeah.
Like, no one's being careful with the artifacts. She hasn't had any opportunity to learn because she like learned about Egypt and stuff just so she could impress like the professor guy.
Impress dad. Because that's her dad. And I could have swore he was actually murdered by the people who brought his body in. I could have swore that's who it was, because I'm just thinking, did these people just kill him?
Well, I think they had to for tradition reasons or something, but then
they just cut off his hand?
They can still return him, which we have to talk about that because he doesn't like spray blood everywhere or anything like you would if you really just hacked your hand off in one go like that. But they cut off his hand and they kind of show it. And then people are just handling the hand detached from him.
Well,
and then they do it again later with the other hand. So it's kind of graphic for this period of time. People probably were a bit shocked, I feel like. It's, of course, not that shocking to us anymore, but at the
we've
time,
watched, like, how many decapitations this month?
Well, I don't know, at least 3, I guess.
Someone's hand coming, and it happens twice.
Yeah, it happens twice, yeah.
The dad gets stabbed and his hand gets cut off, and then B's hand gets cut off in a gate.
Yeah, well, those two are actually different because we don't really, well, I guess with the gate one we kind of see, but the dad one the first one we see, like he goes whoosh,
yeah,
and we see it come off and the stump is left.
Yeah.
Later, there's one where like they go to cut it and we hear the thunk, but we cut to the gold cat statue while it's happening.
Yeah, that's when they cut the hand off the pharaoh. But then we see the hand because they show that it's
they show the hand detached, but we don't see it actually get cut that time.
Yeah.
Now this is in the early 60s, so there's not really, like, this is unrated. There's no, and not because it's unrated, but just because there weren't really ratings yet. So I don't know what
rated A.
Rated, yeah.
For awesome.
Well,
that mummy just ruined that guy's day.
Yeah, ruined my day. So how do we feel about stars?
I'm going to give this one 4 stars. It's not quite to 5 yet, but I really enjoyed this.
It's going to change? It's going to sit here and like marinate in its oldness and get up to 5 or what?
Well, I don't know if it's going to marinate in its oldness or if I'm going to marinate in some brandy.
Well, everyone else is.
I know, right?
I mean, and at one point he gets called out. He's like, what does he say? Drunken oaf? Is that what he calls him?
Clumsy drunken oaf.
When he spills the brandy on the the books, I guess.
I seem to have lost your respect too. You listen here, you little shit.
Respect is fragile, apparently. One moment, it's just respect just gone.
Like, you listen here, like, I came to you because I respect you, and you acting like a drunken fool, and you're doing drunken things. Like, I'm upset. I'm disappointed in you.
It's not like he's the only drunken one either. I
No.
mean, he's the worst that we get, but everybody's drinking all the time. Just all the time. Like punch bowls of drinking, like decanters of drinking, champagne bottles of drinking. There's just drinking everywhere.
If it can hold a liquid, I'm pretty sure it's holding some booze.
It is. It is. Now, for a thing of this time, it's pretty good quality.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of the, I guess the story of it is like, wait, what? And they're making up all of this bogus history, but it's a good time, and it's in Technoscope, which was an early Technicolor brand scope format, which of course it's, you never have Technoscope without Technicolor, and so it's also in Technicolor.
Yep.
Because it'd be weird if it was in
Technoscope and black and white, like
or no, like in some, in what I can't even think of one offhand.
Sepia and seafoam green.
No, there's other color like companies, other color technologies. I can't think of any. Like I was going to say one, I can't think of any.
That's why they don't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, basically nothing exists, but there's like one that I can just like feel like I'm reaching just barely out to just grab. Like I can almost hear the name of it, and I can't quite get it. But I think I'm gonna have to give it 4 also. Like it's not 5 for sure.
Damn it, Austin! Quit
But
agreeing with you.
I know it's only because I let you go first. Most of the time, sometimes I'm like, nah, I'm gonna say, but most of the time you go first. So what about scariness?
It's not scary.
It's not.
It's
no.
one.
It's a one.
But I kind of want to know what people thought of it back when, like, let's just say like in '65 or something. Like someone watched it the following year after like it came out on New Year's Year. New Year's, somebody who watched horror films because that's what they were about back in the day. I want to know what they thought of it as a horror film, because like
I have no idea. I can't easily find any contemporaneous reviews. There's only more recent stuff, and this is just very slightly pre Roger Ebert. Even Roger Ebert started in '67, I think, is when he started working for the newspaper and began reviewing things. So there's basically nothing critical. It's just too early. Yeah. There's nothing.
So
internet
if anything, ask your grandparents. Like, hey, did y'all ever go see movies back in the day? And if they were like, no, we were working on farms, we didn't have time for no movies.
That's
like, okay. I mean, that's life.
At least granddad. I mean, not a farm, but like in the. I guess it was kind of a farm, maybe, but country for sure.
But if they did, ask him if they saw Hammer films. It doesn't matter if it's this one or not. Ask him if they saw Hammer films and if they remember anything from it.
Yeah. Because I don't know. It's just this is the earliest thing that we'll have this month. I think the next closest thing is 68, which will be Night of the Living Dead. I think everything else is slightly after. But even by that point, we're starting to get reviews of things so we can at least compare. Now, as sort of a contemporary context, it's kind of middling. It's in the sort of like, I don't know, 3-4 star range, something like that. Or like, 6 out of 10, something like that. So it's kind of middling. It's just an overall thing. I don't know about scariness particularly. I guess I'll have to say 1 also, because we don't even have the like shocking move over to the number 14 kind of thing. There's nothing to just barely bump it up to 2 like we had in the otherwise
14.
Disappointingly scary others. The
14
others.
14 mummies.
14 mummies.
All right, so I'm going to trademark that. 14 mummies.
14 mummies.
Copyright. Damn it! What's the term? Intellectual property owned by We Watch Movies podcast.
So what is
14 mummies? The story of 12 mummies.
We left 2 of the 16 candles burning, and the other 4 or 14 are they're
They're dead.
Yes.
So, mummy candles. Feel like you should keep candles away from mummies. I feel like they might light up pretty easily. Maybe not as easily as the pods from Body Snatchers, but I feel like 3,000-year-old dry bandages probably gonna burn.
Yeah.
Probably.
Every time a candle goes out, a mummy comes back to life.
No, I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Right there. you let the wick burn for too long, son, and now the mummies are coming. Cornfield full of mummies.
Mummies of the corn.
Yes, Mummies of the Corn. That'd be the sequel of 14 Mummies.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about the Curse of the Mummies too. We'll see you next time.
Later.